Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down my week number 13 running back start or sit decisions for the 2024 fantasy football season. We're going to be going in depth through every single game, the 3 games on Thanksgiving, the game on Black Friday, the Sunday slate, all the way up until Monday Night Football. And I'll be telling you guys whether I believe you should start or sit the running backs in every single game. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 13 running back start or sit decisions for the 2024 fantasy football season. We begin with the first game on Thanksgiving, the Chicago Bears at the Detroit Lions at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we'll start off with the Bears. Now, DeAndre Swift was on the struggle bus last week up against an elite Minnesota Vikings run defense. He had 13 carries for 30 yards, as well as 3 receptions on 4 targets for 35 yards. Now, sadly, for DeAndre Swift, while he did just have that rock-solid matchup up against the Vikings and didn't really have all that much success, he doesn't get a nice cupcake matchup this week, right? He has to face yet another great run defense. Now, ultimately, the Bears offense has definitely looked better ever since firing Shane Waldron and letting Thomas Brown take over the play calling for the team. So I do think that DeAndre Swift will have a fine enough game to be start worthy, but I definitely, as of right now, do not have him ranked inside the top 24 and got him more as a high-end running back 3, especially since Roschon Johnson might just mess around and vulture his touchdown. Now, Roschon Johnson got 2 carries last week up against the Vikings, and he found the end zone, right? He also had 1 reception for 10 yards. Now, if Swift was to get hurt, knock on wood, we don't root for injuries, I definitely think Roschon Johnson would have some standalone value. But with fewer than 6 touches in 4 of the last 5 games, I am not willing to risk it up against a great Lions run defense. Now, for the Lions, David Montgomery currently has the questionable tag as he hurt his right shoulder and exited late in the 3rd quarter last week. The report that he could have came back into the game if needed does tell me that Montgomery is probably going to be suiting up in this revenge game up against his former team. Now, if for some reason, which again isn't my expectation, if Montgomery is not able to go and I end up being wrong based upon what I have read, then Jahmyr Gibbs would end up potentially being the running back number 1 in my rankings. Assuming, though, that Montgomery is in, which is my personal assumption, then Gibbs is a clear top 8 back. Last week, he saw 21 carries for 90 yards and 2 touchdowns with 3 receptions on 3 targets for 9 yards in Indianapolis. As a top 6 running back, the Bears are pretty middle of the road up against the run on a per-game basis, so I expect Gibbs and Monty to form an Eiffel Tower over this defense and for Sonic to finish as a top 6 running back. Now, David Montgomery, even despite the fact that he missed the 4th quarter last week, he was still a top 12 back, 8 rushes for 37 yards, and a touchdown with 3 receptions on 3 targets for 36 yards. He has now scored a touchdown or more in 3 straight games, and on the season, he has scored a touchdown or more in 9 out of 11 games. When healthy, he is a clear top 16 back, and that is exactly where I got him this week up against the Bears as a high-end running back 2. Game number 2 here, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thanksgiving. The New York Football Giants at the Dallas Cowboys in Jerry's World. Now, for the Giants, Tommy DeVito, the Italian Stallion, was a disgrace to Italian Americans across the country last week. The Giants offense was going in reverse, and the Bucs offense and team as a whole was in hyperdrive. Though Horsecock Drew Lock could be the savior on Thanksgiving, as DeVito isn't feeling 100% with a forearm injury. Tracy had 9 carries for 42 yards and 4 receptions on 4 targets, 4 for 4, like he was at Wendy's for 28 yards. Now, the Cowboys defense actually allows the 4th most amount of points on a per game basis to running backs, but if you want to actually contextualize things, The Cowboys defense has been playing a lot better as of recently, so I don't think this is just free reign for Tyrone Tracy to go in there and put belt to ass in Jerry's world. So to me, he's in that low-end RB2 to high-end RB3 range. I love Tracy, but I truly just can't truly talk him up too highly, give him the Sukalamink special, because the offense just isn't all that good. Now, Devin Singletary had 2 carries for 3 yards, but sadly, the bastard, if you had Tyrone Tracy, he was the one with the touchdown. He also had 2 catches for 7 yards. It is a shame that Tracy wasn't the one who found the end zone. But with that being Singletary's first touchdown since week number 3, I doubt that with Tracy taking the reins in the offense that's going to end up happening again. So no need to mess with Devin Singletary in this spot. For Rico Dowdle, he had 19 carries last week up against the Commanders for 86 yards. He also had 3 receptions on 3 targets for 12 yards. Now, neither offense in that game really did much until the end of the game, but you can't just take those numbers away, right? Rico is the clear back on this team. The Giants are not good up against the run, so Dowdle's the kind of guy that I have finishing as a high-end running back 3. Again, I don't think anyone's very excited to start anyone on either of these teams at this point in the season based upon the play of both teams. Now, Ezekiel Elliott is essentially Bernie from Weekend at Bernie's right now. He's just a corpse out there running the fucking football. He has scored over 10 points just twice this season. Now it is Thanksgiving, and you know Thanksgiving is Zeke's favorite holiday, right? The fat bastard loves to eat. He loves to hop into that Salvation Army bowl, right? He is so excited after the game to maybe meet up with whoever is the person announcing the game, right? And eat that turkey leg, maybe if the Cowboys win. But ultimately, when push comes to shove, right? Well, I think, it's Thanksgiving. Maybe he scores it. Maybe I sprinkle a bet down on Zeke to score just for fun. There's a higher likelihood right now that Mono Lewinsky is underneath my desk right now, topping me off over the fact that Ezekiel Elliott actually scores a touchdown. So, in my opinion, he belongs on the waivers. Next up, we move to my favorite game on Thursday, on Thanksgiving, and that's because it has my favorite team in it, the Miami Dolphins at the Green Bay Packers. Thanksgiving, 8:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be cold as fuck. There might be some snow. People are going to be nervous. Oh, the Dolphins can't win in the snow. And while that is kind of true, they barely ever win when it's cold. Something's telling me that something's different this time. But I don't want to sip the Kool-Aid too hard, and I'm not going to make you guys sip the Kool-Aid because ultimately the smart assumption here is that the Packers will win. Now, regardless on if the Packers win or not, Devon Achane has been phenomenal. Chef's kiss Magnifique with Tua Tagovailoa under center. In 6 of 7 games, he has been a top 7 running back. Last week was no different. 10 carries for 32 yards and 3 receptions on 4 targets for 24 yards and 2 touchdowns. Even when he struggles running the ball, he makes up for it with his receiving ability. And honestly, I think Achane is one of the most talented receiving running backs in the National Football League. And even though the Packers actually rank 13th in fewest points per game allowed to running backs, I expect the Dolphins' game plan to be a heavy dosage of Devon 2 chains in this game. And Achane has just been too good as of recently to believe that he's going to slow down. So I got him as a top 5 back on the week. For Jalen Wright, Mostert outsnapped Wright 31% to 19%. But Jalen Wright was the one who got the most touches. He had 8 compared to Raheem Mostert's 3. At this point, it feels like Jalen Wright has turned Raheem the Dream Mostert into Raheem the fucking Nightmare, because right now really feels like the handcuff, but as of right now, all he is a handcuff. I don't really see him getting a crazy amount of touches here, so I definitely think he's a sit, and would it even shock me if Raheem out-touched him? No. So there's really no need to really play the guessing game there. For the Green Bay Packers, as someone that heavily talked up Josh Jacobs all summer, the slow start had me worried, right? And they had me in the first half, I'm not going to lie, right? But with that slow start now on the back burner, Jacobs has been on fire, NBA Jam style over the last 2 games, back-to-back top 5 performances. Last week up against the 49ers, he went bananas. He went nuclear. There is no other way to describe it. The man had 26 carries for 106 yards and 3 fucking touchdowns. 3 touchdowns and over 100 yards. And when a guy is running as red hot as Josh Jacobs, you have to continue to bang the drum for him like a drummer boy, right? The Dolphins defense has looked stronger against the run as of recently, as normally this is a Dolphins defense that is getting plowed like a Chicago street during the winter, right? You are seeing heavy plowing by the opponent going up against the Dolphins run defense, but recently they've stepped things up. They're closer to the middle of the road, but again, and this is a big but, shout out to Sophie Rain, when a guy is playing as red hot as a guy like Josh Jacobs, he's a clear top 12 back, and in my opinion, is a low-end running back one. Before we talk about Emmanuel Wilson and the rest of the games here at the running back position, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends, our partner over at Underdog. And we bring them up now because in this game, Dolphins versus Packers, you can get your free pick, Underdog Feast Week, Jordan Love, higher than half of a total yard, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash if you are a new user. So sign up using promo code Notorious or click on the link in the video description, and if you do it Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, you'll receive your free pick, Jordan Love, higher than half a total yard. You match that with any other player playing not on the Packers on Thanksgiving, or maybe some players on Sunday or Monday, and if both of your picks hit, then you'll get 3 times what you put in your pick'em. If you put in multiple other picks, all of them have to hit, but you receive a higher payout, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. If you're watching this after Thursday, then if you use promo code Notorious, it will be a different NFL player higher than half a total yard, or a NBA player higher than half of a total point. So for Emmanuel Wilson on the Packers, I like Emmanuel Wilson, and with the Packers landing hammer fist to the skull of the 49ers, Wilson was able to secure more work than he typically would due to the fact that the match was a blowout, right? 9 carries for 41 yards. And again, I really do like Wilson, but this is a classic case of a running back too, having a decent amount of skill, but he just can't surpass the clear workhorse who is Josh Jacobs. So there's no need to play him, as I think this will be a closer game. I don't really see this being a blowout, and I think he sees probably 5 or fewer touches up against the Fins. Next up, we move to Black Friday, the Las Vegas Raiders at the Kansas City Chiefs, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So make sure you stop going out trying to, I don't even know, what do people shop for on Black Friday nowadays, right? Don't go out there trying to maul someone for a television. Make sure you're back at home by 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to watch the Raiders going up against the Chiefs. So for the Raiders, Amir Abdullah was the running back 9 on Sunday up against the Broncos, 8 carries for 28 yards and 5 receptions on 6 targets for 37 yards and a touchdown. Now, he has scored a touchdown in back-to-back games, and even if Madison and Zamir were to miss again due to it being a short week, there is an argument that you can make that Abdullah can have a halfway decent game, but the Chiefs are one of the best defenses in terms of stopping the run, and Abdullah is not a spring chicken, right? He's an unk. He's an older running back, and again, while he has scored a touchdown in back-to-back games, I get if you're down bad at running back and you need to play Abdullah, sure, go ahead. I'm not going to sit here and say that he's this god-awful play, right? He's in the running back 3 range, so he's fine because of the volume, but again, the Chiefs' defense is too strong. This is too tough of a matchup, too rich for my blood to play him with no teams on bye. Now, Dylan Lobb, Sincere McCormick, that just sounds like a fake name, the other running back on this team, played 10% of the snaps last week, and Lobb didn't even touch the field without Madison and White. Lobb could see more work this week, but ultimately, whoever the running back 2 ends up being in Viva Las Vegas belongs on your bench. For the Kansas City Chiefs, Isaiah Pacheco did not play last week as he was limited in practice all week with the ankle that knocked him out for multiple months now. I do assume that he does end up playing this week, but it is still up in the air. My thought process is that they ease Pacheco in and that Hunt is still the main back, but there is still a ton of risk in this backfield, because if Pacheco does play, it will definitely throw a wrench into things. I would continue to play this situation by ear, right? And not pretend like on Tuesday, when I'm recording today's video, that we have all the fucking information out there to just give you a clear answer that you need to, oh my God, you got to start Kareem Hunt, right? To me, he's a high-end running back 3, but I won't make a statement too strong because, again, I want to see more practice reports and hear from the Kool-Aid man, Andy Reid himself, before I talk up either Pacheco or Kareem Hunt. So, again, if Pacheco does suit up, I do believe they're going to ease him in. They're going to use the tip technique, right? They're not just going to throw him out to the wolves and take a lion's share of the carries. Pacheco's a great back, but I do think they work him in slowly and don't think you can start him just yet. Next up, we got game number 5, the start of the Sunday slate. This is a slim Sunday slate because we obviously have Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, 3 games on Thanksgiving, and 1 game on Black Friday. So the Chargers at the Falcons. Now, prior to the bye week, the Broncos had the Falcons, calling them daddy, right? Bo Nix and friends absolutely fucked the Atlanta Falcons in the ass, right? Bijan struggled due to that mightily. He was the running back 25, just 12 carries for 35 yards. Now, he faces a tough matchup up against the Chargers, who allow the 5th fewest amount of points on a per-game basis to running backs. With that said, though, prior to Bijan shit in the bed before the bye, he was a top 9 running back in 5 straight games, so I'm not really going to panic. I'm going to stay calm, cool, and collected here and rank Bijan as a top 8 running back. Now, Tyler Algier, in my opinion, is an elite handcuff. And as I talked about in the waiver wire video, if you haven't seen that already, it is handcuff season. So make sure that you are picking up your running back's handcuff before the fantasy football playoffs start. But, and this is a big but, shout out to Sophie D, with Bijan in the lineup, the touches here are going to fluctuate anywhere from like 2 to 3 up to 10 or 11 on a per game basis, making it impossible to ever actually play him with Bijan healthy. For the Chargers, this is another situation that you want to monitor up until game time, right? Gus Edwards, to me, looks like he's permanently running in slow motion, right? Like you're making this video on your iPhone and you turn it to like 0.5 speed, that's what Gus Edwards is permanently running at, right? It looks like they strapped 100 pounds to each of his ankles and he is just trying to run with that and it doesn't work at all. Sure, he scored a touchdown last week, and sure, if Dobbins doesn't play, he is the back who will see the most touches. But this Chargers offense went completely in the wrong direction without Dobbins, and while Gus scored last week, he had 9 carries for 11 yards and a touchdown. I don't really want to be playing Gus Edwards, in my opinion. Now, Haskins is also going to see goal line work without Dobbins, so this could be a big disaster of a scenario, and in my opinion, I'm looking to stay away. Next up, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, for the Bengals, it's easy. It's as easy as A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, right? Chase Brown has been beating defenses down like how O.J. Simpson beat the murder allegations, even though we all know that he did it, right? The glove didn't fit, so we must have quit, right? 3 straight games inside of the top 9 for Chase Brown, and with the Bengals offense being an absolute wagon, there is no need to believe that that is going to magically stop. Last game out prior to the bye up against a top 5 run defense in terms of points per game, Brown was the running back 9 in LA against the Chargers with 22 carries for 86 yards and 5 receptions on 7 targets for 57 yards. The Steelers defense is not elite up against the run, so I expect at bare minimum a top 12 showing out of Chase Brown, and I got him inside of the top 10. Now, Khalil Herbert joined the team back in week number 9 and hasn't scored a single fantasy point as a Cincinnati Bengal. I believe his snaps should increase coming out of the bye, but with Chase Brown playing so well, I doubt they're going to give Herbert enough reps to cut significantly into CB's workload, and that's going to make Herbert unstartable. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, Najee had his worst game of the season last week in Cleveland. The Snow Bowl did not do Najee Harris well at all, as he struggled to get anything going offensively. 16 carries for just 41 yards and 2 catches for 13 yards. And the craziest part about it is when you look at Najee Harris, he just looks like a guy that would play well in the snow, but he just didn't. Warren was the better of the 2 backs as he was able to find the end zone. Warren also outsnapped Najee 57% to 39%. Now, it's going to be interesting to see how the snaps play out, how the touches play out this week, But with Najee's track record of him being a top 20 back reliably from week 6 through 11, and with the Bengals defense being a great matchup here, I will give him one more shot as a low-end running back too before we fully abandon ship here. Now again, Jaylen Warren looked good up against the Browns, 11 carries, 45 yards, and a tug, though I do believe that Deshaun Watson probably got more tugs in Cleveland on Thursday. Warren also had 3 receptions on 5 targets for 19 yards. Even with him out-snapping and outplaying Najee, it is just one game. Again, if this has happened multiple games in a row, then sure, it's a trend to where you might be very, 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 very scared to play Najee Harris. But since it's just one game, weird conditions, I'm not panicking just yet. Next up, we got the Arizona Cardinals at the cold like Minnesota Vikings. Now, despite the fact that the Arizona Cardinals got plowed like they were on the casting couch, James Conner was able to keep his head above water. Sure, it wasn't great, and he didn't even score a bunch of fantasy points, but based upon how Arizona played in Seattle, it could have been so much worse. 7 carries for 8 yards and 5 receptions on 5 targets for 41 yards. Now, prior to last week, he was a top 20 running back in 4 straight games, so I'm not going to panic here. Even in a far from ideal matchup, James Conner should be able to finish as a low-end running back too. For Trey Benson, to me, he is one of the best backup running backs, one of the best handcuffs in fantasy football. Something was to happen to the guy above him, James Conner, knock on wood, we don't root for injuries, I would be very confident throwing him into my lineup, as I believe that he has the ability to play solid at the NFL level. But with Conner healthy, Benson belongs on your bench. There's just not enough touches to go around. And hopefully, the Cardinals figure it out, because the Cardinals' offense up against the Seahawks was anemic. Now, Aaron Jones has had his 3rd highest point total on the season last week in Chicago. Round of applause for him. 22 carries for 106 yards and a touchdown. 3 receptions on 4 targets for 23 yards. This season hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows for Aaron Jones, but ultimately up against a Cards defense that allows the 11th most points on a per-game basis to running back. Jones, two running backs. Jones feels like a middle-of-the-pack running back too. Now, Cam Akers has looked solid in spots in Houston this year as well as on the Vikings, but the team wants to use a bell cow running back, and his name is Aaron Jones. So even with the matchup being solid here, I think starting Akers would be a bad move. Next up, we got for the shoe, the Indianapolis Colts. This is our Colts. This is our team. We bleed blue at the New England Patriots. Ramondre Stevenson. He was another one of these motherfuckers that was stuck with weights around his ankle. He was running like he was stuck in molasses. He was running like he's trying to escape the fucking Sarlacc pit in Star Wars, right? Last week against the Dolphins, he couldn't find any traction at all and was getting plowed behind the line of scrimmage like his name was Elsa Jean. The narrative all season from me and from, I would assume, most fantasy analysts would be that Ramondre is very boom or bust, because if you just look at his season, look at the games, most games, he's either on top of the world, dancing on the fucking grave of the defense, or he's dancing on the grave, hitting the fucking Irish jig on the top of your gravestone for your fantasy team, right? Last week, we saw the bust. This week, we could see the boom with the risk at hand, and with Gibson out-snapping him last week, Ramondre is a low-end running back too. Now, this is a great spot against the Colts. I could really see him having a huge game here. But again, I don't think anyone that has enough brain cells to rub together is 100% confident in Ramondre. Now, Gibson, as I stated before, we were talking about Ramondre just half a second ago, Gibson out-snapped him. He had 6 rushes for 31 yards and 1 catch on 2 targets for 14 yards. And based on what we have seen this season, we should expect Gibson to go back to like 20-ish% of the snaps and Stevenson to play 70+%. So you can't play Gibson. For Jonathan Taylor, back-to-back games where he is the fucking conductor of the struggle train, right? He is the driver. He's like, it's like the magic school bus with Miss Frizzle. He's the Miss Frizzle of the struggle bus, right? And we're not just going into someone's ear with the bus or something. You ever think how fucking weird that show was. Like someone would they would just be learning about something, and then the magic school bus just flies through some dude's fucking urethra to talk about what's happening. I always found that show to be a little bit weird as a child. Now, Jonathan Taylor, back-to-back games again, struggling, begging you, just begging. Like, please, let me do something, right? And I'm begging too. I'm getting down on my knees. Pause. I'm starting to fucking panic. Despite my thesis that Anthony Richardson opens up the run game more, Jonathan Taylor has performed better with the old bastard grandpa Joe Flacco. Now, last week, you could be like, oh, the matchup wasn't the best up against the Lions, so let's discount that. But he also shit the bed up against the Jets in a good matchup in Week 11. The matchup here signifies a clear bounce back is coming. But my personal confidence level isn't the highest. I got him as a high-end running back too, because I just don't trust him right now to blindly throw him into being a top 12 running back. Now, Trey Sermon might spread the good word on a weekly basis, but he hasn't seen above 10% of snaps since Week 9. He's a clear bench warmer, and if you don't have Jonathan Taylor, Sermon belongs on the waivers. Next up, we got the Seattle Seahawks going up against the New York Jumbo Jets. Now, Kenneth Walker for the Seahawks started off the season on top of the world. He was ripping defenses' hearts out on a weekly basis, right? And he was a top 12 running back in 4 of the first 5 games, right? And as a Kenneth Walker, not really fader, but as someone that didn't believe as heavily in Kenneth Walker, there were people in the comment section calling me a silly goose, being like, Nick, you're dumb. And sure, that's how it looked early on in the season, right? And his only down game where he wasn't inside the top 12 was when he was the running back 15 up against the Giants in that stretch. But since then, he has not been a top 12 running back once and has been a top 16 running back twice over the last 4 games. Now, I'm not going to take like some victory lap. You're like, oh, Nick, you were so right about Kenneth Walker. Nick, you're such a fucking genius. You're the Albert Einstein of fantasy football. I'm not going to say that. But it hasn't been as good. I do believe that while the decline here has hit Kenneth Walker III like a lock in a sock, I do believe that Walker should be able to weasel his way into a high-end running back 2 performance up against the Jets defense that kind of has just been waving the white flag as of recently, even coming out the bye. Now, Zach Charbonnet, when it comes to him, you might as well just throw yourself in your lineup over playing Zach Charbonnet, because maybe you watching the game on your couch can score more fantasy points over him, right? Charbonnet is a beast. He's a monster, right? Like that Eminem and Juice WRLD song. But when Walker's healthy, he just doesn't really see the field. Now, Charbonnet is worth holding on to on your bench, but he definitely can't grace your lineup. For Breece Hall, despite the fact that the Jets were taken one in the keister by Anthony Richardson and the Colts prior to the bye, the Jets offense definitely looked solid, and Breece dominated like he was Shaquille O'Neal in the paint. Running back 3 with 16 carries for 78 yards and a score, with 7 receptions on 7 targets for 43 yards and a touchdown, which was his best performance on the season. Hopefully, he was just saving his best for the last, right? Hey, saving his best for the end of the season. Despite the Seahawks defense looking really good up against the Cardinals last week, I do not believe they are that great of a defense, and Breece should be able to rack up a top 8-ish showing here, so I got him as a middle-of-the-pack running back 1. Now, for Braylon Allen, we have seen a very big fluctuation in terms of touches, right? We've seen games where he's getting 10-plus carries twice this season, and in his last 3, his highest touch count was 8, and he had a game where he had just had 2 over that 3-game stretch. So there's no need to fucking play Dungeons and Dragons and roll the dice here and fire up Braylon Allen with Breece healthy. Next up, we got the Titans at the Commanders. Now, Tony Pollard Thanos snapped the Texans defense in Houston last week. 24 carries for 119 yards and a tug with 3 receptions on 5 targets for 10 yards, with Tajay Spears out with a concussion. After 2 down bad games in a row, Tony Pollard got back on the saddle, Dutch Vanderlyn style, as a top 5 running back. Now, Pollard has been a reliable top 24 back all season, but Tajay Spears is another one of these guys that kind of just throws a wrench into things, to where Tajay doesn't get enough work to where you would ever actually quantify starting Tajay Spears with Pollard healthy. But he sees enough work to kind of just chop down the metaphorical cherry tree here of Pollard's work to where he can't really go over the top and have a huge game. Now, Pollard is going to be a mid-range running back 2 for me on the week against the Commanders because they have gotten fisted by the run as of recent, but I can't get too excited because, again, if Tajay's coming back, it's going to knock the touches down. Concussions are tough for anyone to predict in fantasy football, right? They are very confusing because, again, sometimes the guy gets hurt on Thursday, back next Sunday, they get hurt on Sunday, they play next Thursday, or sometimes they miss 3 games, they miss 4 games, right? So he could just as easily come back this week as he could miss multiple other games. Now, if he returns, again, it's going to hurt Pollard's value, but he doesn't actually have enough value on his own to actually be able to play him. Now, another injury here is Brian Robinson Jr., who returned from his ankle sprain for a few snaps and then left again on Sunday. Now, I doubt he'll be close to 100%, but he did say today on 106.7 The Fan that he is not dealing with a high ankle sprain and nothing is going on with the bone. And while I'm as much of a doctor as Johnny Sins, he says he's been surprised with how much he has progressed since the injury has occurred. And B-Rob's another one of these guys, especially with the fact that I don't think Eckler's playing, you kind of just blindly rank inside the top 24. But coming off of an injury, with there being so much unknown as of right now, he's in the running back 3 change, but that is subject to change by Sunday, and by the time you get the running back rankings video later on in the week, I will have a much better idea on this situation. Now, if B-Rob doesn't play, and with my expectation that Austin Eckler does not play, McNichols would be in for a low-end running back 2 finish, but assuming Robinson is able to play at least enough snaps, McNichols is a desperation start, and for most people, that would actually be a sit. Next up, we got the Houston Texans at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, Joe Mixon went down with the ship like the captain of the fucking Titanic as the Texans got shellacked by the Tennessee Titans and Mayo Man Will Levis. Now, technically, Nick, they didn't get smacked. It was a close game. Well, when you lose to the Titans anytime, it's like you got smacked in the fucking face, right? If you're a team like the Texans. Now, the game was close, but it really is just going to be a hard pill to swallow for Texans players and fans. Mixon had his worst game on the season outside of week 2, which I kind of just don't even count because he got hurt in that game. 14 carries for 22 yards and 5 receptions on 6 targets for 23 yards. Prior to last week, he was a top 8 running back in 5 of the last 6 games, and there's no need to panic at all for Mixon as this is a clear get-right game for the offense, and Mixon, as the Jaguars allow the 2nd most points on a per-game basis to running backs, fire him up as a top 3 running back. Now, for Dare Ogunbowale, he is the clear running back number 2 with Joe Mixon healthy. But even so, he didn't get a single touch last week and has just 2 total touches over the last 3 weeks. He belongs on waivers. To me, like, Mixon is really one of a few workhorse running backs in the NFL. There are so many teams that like to utilize multiple other running backs. Like, we're going to talk about the Bucs later. They use fucking 3 running backs on a per-game basis, right? There are games where Dare doesn't get a single touch. And again, he has had just 2 total touches over the last 3 weeks and belongs on waiver. And I really do believe that if you are a Mixon owner and you want the handcuff, I actually don't think Dare is the handcuff. I think if something was to happen to Mixon, that Pierce would actually out-touch him. So I think Pierce is the handcuff to have. For the Jags, I'm going to keep this short and simple, right? Travis Etienne, even with him given the keys to the backfield with Bigsby out, he hasn't done anything. He hasn't scored more than 10 fantasy points since week 5, and it's week fucking 13. Even if Trevor Lawrence magically returns this week, which does seem more than likely based on recent reports, I don't even think that is going to be able to save Etienne up against a top 6 defense in terms of stopping running backs based on points per game. No need to get cute and play him at this point in the season. Now, Tank Bigsby, my hope for him is that the team ends up firing Doug Peterson after this game, but at this point in the season, and the fact that he survived the bye week just tells me that the team management doesn't have the fucking balls. They don't have the cojones to fire the guy, even though he deserves to get fired. So it doesn't seem very likely to happen. Now, Bigsby sat the last game prior to the bye with an ankle injury, and he should return this week. And even though I believe he He wipes the floor with ETN. Ultimately, Peterson loves ETN. I love ETN. So ETN's going to be the running back one on the team and just leaves Bigsby in purgatory. You're not starting either guy. Next up, we move on into an electrifying matchup here. 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The Los Angeles Rams at the New Orleans Saints. Now, Kyren Williams finally got back in the touchdown column after being locked out of the end zone for the prior 4 games. Kyren has been pretty down bad compared to honestly what we're used to with him. And hopefully this week the offense gets hit with a pack-a-punch ballistic knife and they get revived. The Saints allow the 5th highest amount of points on a per-game basis to running backs. So this should be the game where Kyren goes crazy. But again, based on what we've seen recently, what's going to truly make me get real excited, right? Oh my God, the matchup's so great. Even so, he's just a low-end running back one for me. For Blake Corum, even when Kyren is struggling hardcore, the team just doesn't let Corum do anything. He had just 1 touch last week and hasn't seen more than 6 since week 2. Can't be playing a guy that might only see 1 touch here. For the Saints, even with the Saints season having more ups and downs than a fucking roller coaster ride at Six Flags, Kamara has been able to stay steady. Sure, he has had a game outside the top 30, but in 10 of 11 games, he's been a top 24 running back. And that includes games without Derek Carr, and that includes games when the team was bad. And he has 5 out of 11 games inside the top 12. Against a Rams defense that just got diddled by Saquon Barkley on Sunday Night Football, and with the Saints offense playing better after firing resident dumb fuck Dennis Allen, Kamara will be a must-start running back in the top 8 range on the week for me. Then we got Jamal. Jamal, with 2 A's Williams, has missed 3 straight games prior to the bye with the groin injury. If he misses, it will be Jordan Mims as the backup, regardless of which guy gets a hold of Kamara's Gatorade bottle on the sideline. Neither would be playable. Next up, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Carolina Panthers. Now, in honor of Thanksgiving being this Thursday, Bucky Irving carved the Giants defense up like a turkey. 12 carries for 87 yards and a tug, with 6 receptions on 6 targets for 64 yards. Back-to-back games inside the top 7, and with Bucky now having 5 of his last 6 games inside the top 18, we just have to keep throwing respect onto the guy's name. Facing a Panthers defense that allows the most amount of points on a per-game basis to running backs, I definitely think Bucky Irving is flirting with a potential top 12 finish, and I got him as a high-end running back too. Now, Rachaad White, while it might have just sounded like a bit of a slurp fest for Bucky Irving, Rachaad White also deserves a load of credit. This is clearly a top running back tandem in the National Football League, and with Tucker also being a solid running back, they 100% have the best trio at the running back position in the league. Ever since returning from injury, White has now scored a touchdown or more in 5 straight games. And up against a putrid Carolina Panthers defense, I don't know why sometimes I look at the Panthers logo and say Cardinals. I don't know why the fuck that happens. I've done it for years. I don't know why it happens, but sometimes it happens. A putrid Panthers defense, I really do believe that there's enough room for both guys to coexist, the yin and the yang. Now, I do definitely think that Gibbs and Montgomery are the better duo, but I definitely do think they have the best trio. So there's room for both guys to succeed here. White is a great low-end running back 2 option that, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if I ranked him inside the top 19, top 18 by the end of the week. Now, both of those guys you want in your lineup. Now, for Chuba Hubbard and for Jonathan Brooks, in Brooks' rookie debut last week, he had just 5 snaps compared to Hubbard's 55, so 10 times more the amount of snaps for Hubbard. While I expected the team to use the just the tip technique with Brooks, I expected a little more of the tip because it didn't even feel like he got the tip all the way in there, Pauls, as Brooks barely played, right? Hubbard getting the fat contract, and with Brooks still getting ramped up, there's just no reason, in my opinion, to even chance playing Brooks. And there's also 0 reason to believe that Hubbard won't be the bell cow for the foreseeable future. Hubbard played strong up against the elite Chiefs run defense as a top 14 running back with 16 carries for 58 yards and a touchdown, with 1 reception on 5 targets and 2 yards, with the Bucs defense being on the polar opposite end of the spectrum as a top 8 run defense Here, Hubbard is a solid middle of the road running back 2 bet for me. I definitely would have these guys ranked, in my opinion. Bucky would be the best, like if you're just ranking these three, not including, well, we'll include Brooks. Guess what? He's fucking 4th because he might not even see 8-10 snaps in this game. So Bucky would be 1. I would put Hubbard right in the middle of the Bucks, like an Oreo sandwich of Bucks, and then Rachaad White at 3, and then that Jonathan Brooks at 4. I almost said that bum, but I think Jonathan Brooks is better than a bum. It just kind of just doesn't feel like this is just like a wasted year for him. Next up, we got the Philadelphia Eagles at the Baltimore Ravens, the final game before we break down the 2 primetime games, Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football. The Eagles at the Ravens, a matchup of running back 0 player nightmares, right? If you're someone like, oh my God, don't draft Saquon Barkley. And while, to be honest with you, I was kind of more on liking JT over Saquon Barkley. I didn't hate Saquon Barkley. I just would have preferred to get him in the second round. What a stupid fucking dumb bastard I am, though. Dumb fuck, right? Why did I say that? That was obviously wrong. I was someone that liked Derrick Henry, though. This is a beautiful game here. Battle of 2 amazing running backs that are unks. Saquon Barkley performing up against the Rams. That performance is something to marvel about, right? The dude was running the ball like his family was held hostage, and if he didn't run for 200 yards, then something bad would happen to them. And he said, you know what? Hold that 200. I'm getting 255. 26 rushes for 255 yards and 2 touchdowns with 4 receptions on 4 targets for 47 yards. Do we mama? That was a masterpiece of a game. Masterclass by Saquon Barkley. And he did this coming off of a 30-plus point performance as the running back 2 against the Commanders. While Saquon has had some down games on the year, right? He has. I'm not going to lie. Not going to sit here and pretend that didn't happen. And I get the Ravens defense is solid against the run. This isn't the most wet dream matchup for him. Ranking him anywhere outside the top 3 would be fucking foolish. So he is my running back 1 as of right now. For Kenneth Gainwell, he ended up finding the end zone last week on a 13-yard run. Late in the game in the 3rd quarter. Blowout right up against the Rams. I don't believe the game will be a blowout. And with Gainwell struggling to find the field and find touches with how well Saquon has been playing, he is just a clear sit for Derrick Henry in a tough spot up against the Chargers defense. Henry had 24 carries for 140 yards. They won. Good enough, right? But he didn't find the touchdown because Justice Hill was the running back that found the end zone. Now, Tractor Cito was still a top 16 running back, but due to so many teams being on bye and based upon the standard we've set with Derrick Henry, that is kind of far from the ideal game for him. The Eagles defense has really came to form as of recently, and with their run defense being 5th in lowest amount of points per game allowed to, or top 5 in terms of lowest amount of points per game allowed to running backs, I can't fully give Henry the Gawk 9,000 special here as a top 5 running back, but he's definitely a low-end running back 1 for me. And Big Justice Hill brought the boom on Monday Night Football with 4 carries for 55 yards and a touchdown, as well as 2 receptions for 7 yards. This is a classic example of a blind squirrel finding a nut every once in a while, a broken clock being right twice a day, with this being his 3rd touchdown on the season, and with his usage fluctuating so heavily from week to week, he is a sit. Next up, we got Sunday Night Football. Now, another matchup littered with injuries. Now, the hope is that horsecock Brock Purdy can return this week and fix the 49ers offense, because without Brock Purdy, this was an offense that was in need of a map. They needed a map. They needed a GPS. It was like when Michael and, oh my God, I'm so bad with names. Dwight Schrute, when they're driving with the broken GPS and they land in the fucking pond or the river, whatever that was, a lake. I haven't watched The Office in a long time, but you know what I'm talking about. If you've watched The Office, which pretty much everyone has, right? This offense needs a map without Brock Purdy. Brandon Allen, not only does he need a map, he needs a seeing eye dog. And with Allen under center, you just can't be too excited to play Christian McCaffrey with how great the Bills have been playing. Now, Christian McCaffrey right now is a low-end running back 1. I think it would be hard to bury him way more. But man, with Allen, he couldn't even score 10 points last week. So I would probably have to drop him outside the top 18. This is a clear situation that you want to just keep your eye on, keep monitoring, as if Purdy plays, he should be able to be a mid-range running back 1. Now, Jordan, the numbers, Mason, what do they mean? Has been sent to Alcatraz with Christian McCaffrey back. Shanahan series, zero need to reduce McCaffrey's workload, and it's just going to feed Christian McCaffrey, so there's no need to play Mason as his ceiling is around just like 5 touches. For James Cook, he entered the bye week with back-to-back Michael Jordan 96-97 top 12 showings. Even more impressive when you consider he was the running back 7 up against a Chiefs defense that has locked up running backs and thrown away the key all season long. The 49ers defense has not lived up to expectations, and with Cook cooking defenses like his name was Gordon Ramsay this season, he is a high-end running back too, and if Purdy misses, we could end up seeing, and we will end up seeing, Cook crack the top 12, because Christian McCaffrey's ranking is going to fall like Humpty Dumpty off that wall. Now, at one point in the season, there were people lining up to fucking suck off Ray Davis and talked about how he was going to cut into James Cook's workload, but that really hasn't happened. And while I may sound negative on Ray Davis, I do believe that he's a great handcuff, but with Cook healthy, he'd be lucky to see more than 5 touches. Even in a great spot here, I would not play him. Next up, we got Monday Night Football, the Cleveland Browns and famous Jameis Winston at Big Dick Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos. Now, as a Jameis Winston truther, I really want to believe that Jameis Winston is going to hit the Broncos defense with the fucking people's elbow, and they will be having this game. They'll be up. They'll be able to run the ball a bunch. But more than likely, with how the Broncos have been playing, this could be a game where the Browns are playing from behind and not really able to run the ball a ton. The Broncos are middle of the road up against the run, and as a 9-inch Nicholas Chubb lover, I hope that he can get it done. The key word there is hope. Last week, he scored 2 touchdowns on 20 carries for 59 yards in the Snow Bowl, and while my heart wants to be all over Nick Chubb, I do think that there's not really a great argument to start him here. Jerome Ford, F-150, saw his workload retracted last week, and with Chubb getting more and more healthy, Ford is now irrelevant in fantasy. Javonte Williams, I'm kind of just done at this point dealing with the Broncos running backs. I love what I've seen out of Bo Nix, and I believe that this offense will perform in this game, but, and this is a big but, shout out to Kelsey Monroe, this running back room is a complete and utter unmitigated disaster. They all have talent, but ultimately your guess is as good as mine. Who ends up being the guy? Jaleel McLaughlin led the team in carries against the Raiders last week with 7. Estime had 3, and Javonte had 8 for -2 yards. This backfield is too hard to read. It could easily be Estime. It could easily be Javonte Williams. It could even be Jaleel McLaughlin. A triple-headed backfield of death over here in Denver. That is a clear avoid. Now again, one of them could have a good game, and it wouldn't surprise me, but why play the guessing game? Why guess? There's no one on bye, right? It's not like unless your team is real down bad at running back, you're dealing with injuries or something, or maybe you just weren't able to play the running back waiver wire well, or you just didn't draft running backs well, which happens. It does happen. Some of you might have to play one of these guys. If you had to play one, my guess would be Javonte Williams, but again, I don't want to play that guessing game, right? And I definitely, if I had to play anyone in this game, it would 100% be Nick Chubb, just because I believe in the player and his workload a lot better. So thank you guys all so much for watching today's video. If you didn't enjoying, and this was a bit of a longer one, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. Make sure you guys do check out Underdog, promo code Notorious, to get your free pick. Jordan, love me tender, love me sweet, higher than half of a total yard, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. I love you guys more than you'll ever know. Check out one of the videos on our screen if you haven't seen them already. Have a great one, and as always, good boy.